And we're live.
All right, guys, welcome to another episode of the Blockheads. I'm Trevor.
I'm Travis.
And we keep forgetting to do this. So a couple episodes ago, we finally got sponsored by the three largest decentralized news networks on Blockstar, and we have not mentioned them once. You'll see them, listed down below. We're
Yep.
showing them, but we got to do this properly, otherwise, we're sponsorship. So, all right, presented by The Chain, always on, The Spread, Get the Word Out, and The Drift.
Yeah, man.
Speed is life. Didn't know that one. Have it in front of me. But guys, episode 6, we are here. Very excited to be back. Life has been busy, but here
Yep.
we are for you. And Travis, take it away, sir.
Well, I just thought I'd start out by reading you this email I got from Coinbase.
Okay.
As we've pretty much all heard that Coinbase is finally being sued by the SEC.
Hmm.
So they let me know that they could use some help here. And they basically said exactly that. They say crypto is the most important technology to update the financial system and to create more economic freedom around the world. And how the U.S. defines and regulates digital assets will have major implications for our technological and financial future. I think we can all agree on that. But they continue by saying that's why it's more important than ever to advocate for the pro-crypto policy here at home, where policymakers are making crucial decisions about the future of crypto. Are you ready to get involved? Here's
I
how you,
mean, sign me up.
yeah, right? Here's how you can join the Stand with Crypto movement. Number 1, make your voice heard by minting a Stand with Crypto NFT.
How much is this going to cost me?
I'm not sure what they say that there's been 130,000 of these NFTs minted already so far.
Good.
And
Okay.
after you mint your NFT, they want you to make sure that you add a shield on Twitter, on your Twitter bio, so that you can then go on Twitter and I guess that's it. You just have to pay a little money, go on Twitter, and that's all you got to do to make sure that the United States government doesn't ruin crypto for the world. Um,
I have multiple questions at this point. One, does this NFT get me anything? Is there any utility for
Well,
it?
it's funny you should ask that because down here it says that let's see here. This NFT is purely commemorative in nature. It's an unlimited open edition and has no value or utility. It's also not intended for trading. Uh, and of course, they let us know that this information is not investment advice. And it's not a recommendation to buy or sell a particular digital asset. They also go on to say that Coinbase does not profit from the Stand with Crypto NFT collection.
Mm-hmm.
Any mint fees associated with the collection on Zora, I'm not familiar with Zora, but
Sora.
will be donated to vetted crypto advocacy organizations. They don't say who, but that will be through
Coinbase.
a crypto advocacy round with Gitcoin. I've also not familiar with Gitcoin either.
Bitcoin?
Yeah. Um,
I've never heard of such a thing.
so they assure us that they don't benefit from any of this, even though they're the ones being sued by the SEC,
Okay.
and that their vetted organizations will be responsible for distributing things to, I don't know, the Biden family or whoever. I'm not sure exactly who they vetted. Um, but yeah, I just thought that was kind of a funny way to start the podcast, considering that one of the things we did want to talk about was the SEC suing Coinbase, and I believe they're going after Binance now too. Is that correct?
Yep.
You have
They
more
went after
info on this.
Binance first. This is true. I will say, I think where all that money is going to go, I think it's going to be to grease the palms in this situation. It'll probably go directly to Gensler, like, hey, leave us the fuck alone. Here's some ETH or whatever chain they want to mint on.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, freaking it's just bullshit. But you're right. So that's been the big news of the past 3 days now. Um, they came out strong on Monday, the SEC, and they announced that they were suing Binance. And it was like, oh shit. Binance, as most people are aware of, maybe they're not, is the world's largest exchange. It's
Yeah.
very centralized in the US. We have an extra level of
Well, in the US, it's
separation.
Binance.us.
Binance.us. Right, right. But yeah, and then the following day they went after Coinbase, which for Coinbase, because we'll get back into Binance because I think that's a bigger thing. The day after they sued Coinbase and they went after him for being an unregistered broker, exchange, and clearing agency all occurring simultaneously. So it's like, okay, and they have their various stake and rewards. They went after him for that. But for Binance, it's much bigger, and I think it paints a much broader stroke for the entire crypto agency. I'm not trying to be doom and gloom, but this is why they're going after Binance. They're alleging that Binance offered unregistered securities, and it'd be like, okay, well, which are these? The list is extensive. So it's Cardano, Solana, Polygon, Filecoin, or Philcoin, however you want to pronounce that, Atom, Sand, Mana, Algo, which, Algorand, and Cody. Like, that's a very extensive list. That is, oh my God, they are going after all of these. They're calling them securities. This is that broad brushstroke. This is a clear clarification that only in the SEC's eyes that Bitcoin and Ethereum are commodities, not securities. They are sufficiently decentralized.
Right.
But they went a step further. This occurred yesterday. They tried to get a temporary restraining order. When I say they, I mean the SEC against Binance. So if this were to go through, if this temporary restraining order gets approved, there would be an immediate freezing of assets. Binance would have 5 days to ensure that only Binance.us has access to those funds. And within 30 days, funds need to be moved to a new wallet entirely that only Binance.us has access to. As of today, Binance.us has halted all trading for dozens of pairs, including USDT, BTC, BUSD. Yeah, it's swift. I don't use Binance personally. I haven't used Binance. Well, let me clarify. I have not used Binance.us in quite some time. They've burned me quite a few times, whether it be, hey, I'm trying to purchase one Binance coin and somehow I get charged for two. Granted, do I get those two? Yes. Or I'm trying to cash out and they're like, hey, something happened. 7 months go by and then they're finally like, huh, you sent us a follow-up email just now. I'm like, no, I fucking didn't. Yeah, we can help you out with that for an added fee. I'm like, son of a bitch. Yeah, I want my money. I want my money. So yeah, fuck Binance.us, fuck Binance in general. Most of the coins on their platform, on the Binance Smart Chain, it's a bunch of get rich quick because they have low transaction fees. But
they're very well known for the scam coins, yes.
Correct. Correct. Which, I mean, I think the scam coins have now even gone over to Ethereum, even though they have higher gas fees. We all saw Pepe coin. But yeah, it's pretty wild what the SEC is doing, and I think the greater implications for the markets. A lot of people, like I said, going into this, want to go with the doom and gloom approach. To be honest with you, I mean, I have current numbers.
And remember, it's not a scam coin.
The market's bounced back.
It's not a scam coin if you're invested in it.
Correct. So I'll just talk about the big three in this instance. So we definitely saw the markets take a hit. I think Bitcoin flash crashed down to 25,000. So currently, where it's sitting, Bitcoin is sitting at 26,279. Ethereum is 1828, and BNB is sitting at 257. So I mean, BNB is definitely taking a hit. All projects by association on the BSC have taken a hit in value. Ethereum didn't even really flinch. It's down 3% in the last 24 hours, but that's nothing in crypto. Same with Bitcoin, whereas BNB is down 8.6%. A few of the projects I'm invested in, I talk about it time and time again. I always talk about Blockstar. They took a hit, and they're only down 0.4%. They are recovering. That's great. You have PIN, Pay It Now, which I'm going to be releasing a video series on them. They're extensive, and we can get into that potentially later. When I last bought in, because they actually have an on-ramp now directly on the PIN app. So it doesn't matter where in the world you are, you can use credit card, debit card, things like that. But I bought in somewhere around like 0.0079, and it's dropped down to 0.0064. So they're down 7.8%. But still, just to give you a general idea, again, if buy or Blockstar is on Ethereum, Pin is on Binance.
Sure.
It's a clear indicator of, hey, it probably should stay away from Binance. Blockstar was on BNB or BSC, I should say, and after the whole BUSD Paxos fallout, they immediately switched over to Ethereum, and it was a very smart move. I know Pin is trying to come out with their own blockchain, just like Blockstar, but that's not going to be till Q4 this year.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to tell them to rush their process. I wouldn't tell anybody
Oh.
to rush anything at this point. I think that even for projects to attempt to change blockchains right now would be foolish, just because the exchange rate is going to be trash, especially, again, if they are on BSC. I'm not sure about what's happening with projects that are on Cardano, Solana, or Polygon that are built on top of that. I don't know. Haven't looked into it. But yeah, the greater implications, the greater effects on the crypto market are certainly being felt. However, again, it was the day they announced, everyone took a huge hit, and then they went back up. It was a small period of extreme FUD, and the markets are going to carry on how they will. I think what a lot of people need to remember is the crypto markets are just greater than the US. This is worldwide.
Absolutely.
And don't get me wrong, are people across the world, other agencies and governments, going to kind of, all right, what's the SEC doing? Okay, we could do something similar, sure. But you have the European Union going with their MiCA resolution. People are figuring it out. The SEC has offered little to no guidelines when it comes to registering to be in line with their policies. So
Yeah.
you have Coinbase, which is always funny. Coinbase saying like, hey, you haven't done anything to clarify. You now have Robinhood joining in today with Coinbase saying, hey, yeah, we tried to register with you guys. You gave us no guidelines. You gave us nothing to do. You never even got back to us. So there's a lot of murky things going on there, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my experience with Binance.us was pretty similar. And I mean, my experience actually was very difficult for me even to get their website to perform as intended. I mean, like most of the times things would bug out, and I'm one of those guys that uses crazy browsers sometimes, but I resorted to having to access it with Google Chrome, and it didn't help. It didn't help anything.
No.
And so for that reason, I was always really. It was basically the last place I would go, only if I had no other choice whatsoever.
Right.
And then of course even 6-7 months back now, we've heard rumblings about Binance being on the chopping block, and so I made sure to get out. I don't keep stuff, any kind of funds on centralized wallets anyway. So I never really, I only have my money or investment coins on there for the time that it takes me to either buy, sell, or get them off of the exchange. Sometimes they have their wait periods and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Which that's another reason I don't like using them. I don't want to
Yeah.
have to wait 7 to 10 days.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how many times I've used my card or my bank account with them, it's still like, nah, you gotta wait.
Right.
Like son of a bitch. Which also I didn't mention, but another reason why the SEC is going after Binance is they are alleging that I can't remember how to properly pronounce his name, but CZ,
Yeah.
the CEO of Binance, had some sort of backdoor into the Binance.us. They received all this other monies, and
Yeah.
it's like, okay, this sounds familiar. This sounds like something
Yeah.
that happened earlier in the year.
Yeah.
PX, or was that last year? It's been a
Yeah.
wild road, but it's like, oh, this is very familiar. And of course, you have this guy outside of the the jurisdiction of the U.S. There's no way he's ever going to come to the U.S. He's never
Yeah.
getting locked up.
Yeah.
No one's going to extradite him. But yeah, he's just like toodles. Which the funny thing is, do you know that CZ was a Canadian citizen?
I don't know too much about him in depth, but
Yeah.
yeah.
And he was immediately like, deuces.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's kind of what you do when you're juggling that kind of money too. You know, I mean,
True.
these guys have a lot to lose by being caught, you know, in the U.S. or something like that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I mean, as far as you know, where I do most of my trading and stuff is, I've always been a big fan of Kraken. It's been like the best centralized exchange that I've had a good experience with. That's strictly my opinion based on
Mm-hmm.
my own subjective experiences. Um, and
I bought a
according,
few things off Kraken. Like I think I bought some Avalanche,
yeah,
and then of course didn't do the proper research into it. I thought I had to create this whole separate Avalanche wallet. Realized after the fact, right
yeah,
as I was about to transfer, I'm like, oh, I can just add it to the MetaMask, at the Avalanche network,
yeah,
and we're good to go. But I mean, I don't have any complaints about Kraken. They
yeah,
just sent me an email actually saying, "Hey, we support ACH again," and I was like, "All right, I don't
yeah,
really use
yeah.
you guys,
Which was
but
good. Which was good. The last time I actually tried to buy any crypto, it was with them, and I couldn't even get USD onto their exchange in order to make a
hmm
purchase, and this was kind of back when they were. I think I found out maybe a day or two later after their support sent me an email, which is another thing. Their support actually responded to me, which was
oh,
nice.
that's good."
Um, but they basically said that this is no longer something that we can do at this point. You know, um, unfortunately, I didn't have anything on there. Didn't have any funds or coins or anything on their exchange wallets. And so I really haven't messed with them since then. And of course, the SEC had their suit against them and shut them down for their. I think that what was it? There's certain. I'm not sure if it was related to. I can't remember right now if it was related to their leverage stuff, or if it was their earn type
I think it was their
programs.
staking.
Yeah, their staking
Yeah.
programs. Yeah, which I never messed with. I mean, impermanent loss at my level of investment is makes staking for me a useless thing. It's just a waste of my time.
Yeah,
Um,
I have so many hesitancies about putting my tokens onto an exchange for staking. Have I done it in the past? Sure.
sure, yeah,
Seen some decent returns, but at the end of the day, I can't trust that this exchange is going to be able to properly protect my funds. They're going to do
exactly.
what they're going to do with it. It's fractional holdings, so they only have to hold 10% or whatever it happens to be. We don't read the fine print ever,
Yeah,
but they do the same thing that the banking system does.
yep,
And too often I have heard about exchanges going under. We are both familiar with exploits on exchanges,
yep.
and it only takes one time. It
Both
only takes one time.
both
And I'm like, nope,
centralized and
I'm good.
decentralized. Yeah, yeah. So
I'm good.
yeah. So like I said, and I did get that hey, we have ACH deposits re-enabled now, which was actually, I was happy to see that. You know, even though I don't have a lot of dry powder lying around right now, so I'm not really
hmm
looking to make too much investments. I haven't really been over at Kraken recently, so I can't speak to that. But as far as Binance goes, I just gave up on them even before all the noise started coming down. Um, Really, I mean, at this point, my go tos, if I were to go ahead and try to do some investing or trading, I would probably try to use Kraken first. And one of the things, at least back in like kind of towards the bull market a couple years ago, that many of us jumped in. That's where a lot of people jumped in on crypto. Um,
Yep.
but I think the difference between Kraken and say Binance was just a lot of the fees and stuff. But you know, for me, I found that a lot of the fees that to transfer your funds out weren't as high on Kraken as they were on Binance. It actually cost me
Mhm.
double what Kraken charged me to move roughly the same amount of coins in Bitcoin off of Binance than it did on Kraken at that point. So that's another reason that I went for them. But this is not me trying to do an ad for Kraken. But the other, if I had a choice, I'd go for them first, and if not, if I needed something bigger or some other reason, I would go to Coinbase. They've been my other go-to.
They're
Although,
definitely my go-to.
yeah, and again, although I've removed all my funds and coins off of their centralized wallets a long time ago.
Hmm.
I think really, all I have is maybe some ETH and probably some BNB on the smart chain, on MetaMask. And aside from that, it's cold wallets with Bitcoin. Uh,
Hmm.
but yeah, I mean, seeing the SEC go after Kraken, which is definitely one of the smaller exchanges, was disappointing, because they just couldn't defend themselves quite as well as, say, Binance US or Coinbase has the ability
Hmm.
to, especially now that Coinbase is minting NFTs to help us stay strong. And like I said, I mean, thank God you only have to pay a little bit of money to mint an NFT and then go on Twitter, and that's how apparently in the U.S. they want us to believe that we've done something to help. I think
Part of a movement,
the
man.
biggest line of shit in the world, man. I mean,
Throw up your shield, defend the
yeah,
cause.
yeah. I mean, so look, I mean, there's good things and bad things about Twitter, and social media in general, but most of it seems to have been a bad thing, and most
Hmm.
of it is just, it's all show, it's all shine, you know.
True. True.
Either way, no matter where you're at on the political spectrum, it's just a bunch of bullshit, a bunch of paid propagandists, and a bunch of Hollywood, um, you know, like I say, shine and special effects to try to keep you distracted. Um,
I mean, there's a lot of distractions going on in the world right now.
yeah, definitely, definitely. Um, One of the things, do we have anything else about Coinbase to talk about the SEC? Because I'm not really too sure about what's going on with the SEC and Coinbase, other than the SEC got apparently finally decided to officially sue them after Coinbase they wrote them a letter saying like, we want you to respond, and then I can't remember. I remember hearing something about, like, somewhere in the government they said, hey, you guys got to respond to them within a certain amount of time, and it sounds
Right.
like the
So they did
response was
respond within the
yeah.
10 days. They
Right.
did, like on the 10th
Well, the
day.
response was
Um,
that we've already laid out all the rules and regulations, correct? Which is
right.
absolute just an absolute fabrication and a lie.
True.
You
True.
know,
And I mean, the big thing here to take into account is you have these agencies, these unelected officials
yeah. Gary
who
Gensler.
are appointed. Gary Gensler, he is going to be the head of the SEC until 2026. That is the end of his term. So it doesn't matter who's going into office, except, I mean, that's not necessarily true. All of these people serve at the pleasure of the president, if
Sure.
I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
could see him removed. I have heard that Janet Yellen, or however you want to pronounce her name, who's currently the head of the Treasury, is looking to dip out. Sorry, got damn it, military helicopters flying over.
I
Um,
can't hear anything, man.
oh, thank God.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll continue. So she's looking to step down, and Gary wants to take her place. And now it's a question of like, well, shit, who would take Gary's place? It's a very sticky thing. I know that there are um, a couple different members of what's the digital current. I don't remember the exact thing. Basically, Gensler got hauled before Congress within the last month and a half. And two of the members of Congress there were like, yeah, we're going to introduce legislation to boot your ass out of here. We don't
Yeah.
like the way you're doing things. You're stifling growth in the US. You're causing these various, I guess, opportunities for the US to earn money to dip out and go to other countries because you're not clarifying your policies. You're not introducing proper framework for people to register. You're being very just about it. And at the end of the day, I don't know necessarily what will happen there. I would love for Gary to get bounced out, but who's going to step up in his place? Is it going to be someone that's appointed that's down with CBDCs? We don't know. I mean, Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I think
I could continue rambling.
I think the one thing that we do know is that in order to even get to a position where you would be considered for something like that, you're pretty much, it has nothing to do with whether you're qualified or the best person for the spot, or even if you want to talk about whether it's equity and inclusion and all that stuff. It's about, you have to be already compromised. You know what I mean?
True.
It seems like that's the really big thing about getting a position in any of these kind of positions, whether it's in federal government or even state and local government, is you have
Right.
to be compromised so that, excuse me, so that they know that you're basically on board with all the fuckery that's going, that they're going to put
Oh
on
yeah.
you.
Are you gonna play
And
ball?
yeah. So we don't know who it's going to
Excuse me.
be, who it could be, but yeah, and that's one of the reasons why when I heard about Gensler getting booted out, it's like, well, you know, meet the new boss, same as the old boss, you know.
Right.
Um, so so yeah, I mean, I haven't, like I said, I haven't heard a lot about the actual SEC suit against Coinbase, which seems to be kind of in line with the SEC. They don't seem to really want to tell us exactly what the right way to do things is, or they just tell us that the wrong way to do things is the way we're doing it, you know.
Right.
Um, so so again, I don't know how that's going to turn out. I mean, I make fun of Coinbase for asking me to mint an NFT and put, you know, a shield in my Twitter bio, because it seems like just another way for them to get money. And I would much rather just give them money to fight the SEC directly, if they were going to do that. But I think they certainly have a better war chest than what Kraken had when they were going up against them.
True.
Um, and let's remember that Coinbase, you know, when you put your funds into their wallets, that's essentially being held in a Wells Fargo account, or more than likely a Chase Bank account,
Right.
um, headed by none other than Jamie Dimon, who I think is probably one of the, not just what I would call a global elitist, but one of the people that has kind of been one of the biggest supporters of what I call the global economy, which is the biggest Ponzi scheme that the world has ever seen. Certainly, financially speaking, anyway.
Hmm.
So, I mean, there's a lot of, I don't know if, you know, if I want to sit there and cheer for Coinbase, you know, based on the things that they're doing. I know everybody needs financing, and so I'm not going to try to like hold the company's CEO and the people that are the shareholders of Coinbase responsible for who they get their financing from.
Right.
But I mean, it's certainly something that should be at least transparent, more than it is probably. And so when I hear the SEC is going after Coinbase, you know, another centralized exchange, and as you said, it's not just FTX that we've had problems with. You know, I don't trust the whole idea of centralization, where one person or entity owns, you know, 2/3 of the global financial system. You know that it's this is why Bitcoin came about, and this is why decentralization is being talked about. But in my experience, the first red flag of, you know, a centralized platform is somebody who claims that they're decentralized. Um,
Hmm.
but at any rate, I mean, that kind of, I would kind of like to roll into something that I've been looking at more in depth lately, and I'm really ashamed of myself that I hadn't looked at it before, back in 2017 when it came about, and that's SegWit. Speaking strictly about the Bitcoin SegWit update. Um, and one of the things, I've got my information here so I can pull up, is what is SegWit, and I think in order to understand what it stands for, segregated witness.
Hmm.
And one of the things we need to understand is, okay, we know what segregated means, but what is the witness? Um, and so let me just read from the information I have here, just to softly kind of introduce people back into this, because I haven't heard people talking about this so much anymore, and I have concerns. So here, to kind of quote the paper, and I'll try to put the link to what I'm looking at here uh, when we post this. But it says a normal Bitcoin transaction stores both transaction and signature. That's the witness data together in the block. This is signatures accounting for 60% of the data size. Um, so this means that basically this was how the argument went for SegWit. Is you can kind of guess where we're going is segregating the witness signatures, if that's 60% of the block size, is going to have a beneficial effect on scalability and gas fees and things like that. Not having the bigger blocks is going to make things go faster and be cheaper.
Hmm.
Uh, However, the witness portion of what we're talking about here of the transaction is actually kind of the legal, uh, literally the legal witness, the legal signature that proves that the funds were yours and you sent them to someone else, or that they were yours and someone stole them from you. And that also goes for any kind of smart contracts. In a legal sense, at least here in the U.S., essentially that's what's required to legally, in a court of law, prove that this was yours and that perhaps it was taken from you unlawfully.
Hmm.
Um, so the next thing to go into is how does SegWit change the picture? And it says rather than directly raising the 1 megabit block size, SegWit would indirectly increase the block's capacity to store more transactions by separating the signature, aka witness data, from the transaction data. So it then creates two hashes, which is one, a regular hash of just the transaction data with the signatures, and two, a witness hash consisting of a hash both of the transaction data and the witness data for storage in a block. The Bitcoin protocol already uses the Merkle tree, which is a hierarchical data structure composed of hashes of information. And this effectively stores transaction data and places the Merkle root into the block header of every mined block. SegWit creates a second Merkle tree to separately store the witness hashes, but importantly, does not require nodes to keep the signature data. So what this is saying is that at this point, now that we have the SegWit update, like I said, from since 2017, um, not all nodes are required to keep that signature, aka witness data. Um, and this is great if you're trying to run a node and you don't have a lot of resources available. Um, but the first thing that says to me is that means that we're going to have more centralization. We're going to have less nodes that are running the full aspect of the keeping the segregation, keeping the witness signatures available. Um, so SegWit assumes that the signature data is only needed when transactions are being validated and can thereafter be discarded as unimportant. And so basically, again, this means that not all the blocks, not all the nodes are going to have this information. And from what I'm understanding of this means that the nodes that do keep this, again, these would be nodes that have less limited resources to worry about. And who do we know that has virtually unlimited resources? You know what I mean? This makes things much more centralized, in my opinion, when it comes to
Hmm.
the Bitcoin network nodes. Um, and again, it says Bitcoin nodes would not be required to keep the signature data. Um, it basically means that you only need to keep that data for a limited time while validation is occurring, and once validation has occurred, that's it. you have no way to prove that. So once the validation happens, you essentially have no way to prove this. Only the nodes that continue to keep that data are going to be, a place for you to get that kind of a legal witness, to prove that that was yours or that you sent it to somebody. Like I said, this does has implications for basic smart contracts in a legal sense. So basically, it says if most nodes drop the signatures, which is the likely result, the blockchain can only reliably serve as a ledger for worldwide business transactions if some nodes choose to specialize in storing all signature data, and this gives those nodes special weight as a trusted source to verify and authenticate Bitcoin transactions and signatures. But this is antithetical to the idea of Bitcoin as a decentralized, trustless system with no central authority. The other way is that companies and consumers operating on the blockchain must keep their own copy of the transaction records or their own nodes storing all blockchain's transactions with signature data, so they have access to the signature data later if needed for legal proceedings or audits. But this requires massive data duplication and eliminates the efficiencies of using a blockchain as a decentralized ledger. So this is kind of what I'm talking about with SegWit. Having not gone too much further than that myself, I don't really want to go into too deep of the implications. But again, I mean, something that's been talked about for months and months and months now is what coins are decentralized. People want to know. Well, because they find out. we just had a couple of CEOs disappear, and people saying, "Oh, they're in hiding. Oh, they got murdered." Well, either way, the result is the same for people who have their funds and investments locked up in these chains. And so people want to know. They want to say, "Wait a minute. If a CEO of a company can take down the network, how is that decentralized?" And that's a great question to ask, because it's not. It's absolutely not. That's why I keep saying, the only coin that I know of myself that's actually decentralized is Bitcoin. And reading about this SegWit idea makes me wonder if that's true either, because what this implies is that only organizations and entities that have massive capabilities and resources are going to be able to actually continue to store. I mean, you as a personal user of Bitcoin are not going to run a node just so you can store all the witness data, because it's not just your witness data, that you're going to be storing when you're running a node. You're talking about massive amounts of transactions going on every 10 minutes. So the implication on decentralization is huge to me here. I mean, we've already heard rumors of these big, powerful financial entities, and how much of just the nominal, regular global financial system they already control. And then it makes you wonder, it's like, if these people are smart enough to do that, wouldn't you figure they'd be smart enough to already, and this is the question I wonder, is how many of these full nodes that are keeping these witness signatures are already controlled by many of the same basic entities?
I mean, we'll never know.
Corporations that, are essentially the same system. In some cases, corporations and entities that are literally having their financial and investment infrastructure controlled by their own AI algorithms. And these certainly aren't algorithms that are designed to benefit the greater global financial system or the people that make our food, the people that, plumb our houses and run our infrastructure and things like that. These are basically algorithms that consolidate control and more financial resources behind them. So, I mean, is Bitcoin even decentralized anymore? Because what we have now with SegWit, and the thing that really got me into this was the ordinals and the taproot. You
Hmm.
know, hearing about what actually that was made me look further back into what SegWit was. And so, yeah, I mean, you can. I don't think that you can really say you can. I don't think you can say without a doubt that the Bitcoin that we have today is actually what Satoshi described in his 2008 white paper. Certainly not the same Bitcoin that he loosed upon the world in 2009. Um,
Well, I mean, I'll be the first to admit I have a very loose understanding of SegWits. You're the one who actually brought it to my attention. Had I heard the term before? Yes.
mhm.
Is it something that I've come across the terminology, of course, but hearing all of that, I'm like, well, shit. I mean, at this point, what Bitcoin Cash is I guess that would be your only other option.
Yeah, yeah. So from what I understand, is that was the fork. That was
Hmm.
the people that are behind Bitcoin Cash now are essentially the same people that weren't didn't want to compromise the security and the decentralization of the Bitcoin network with SegWit. Um,
Hmm.
Now, I'm not sitting here telling everybody to pull out of Bitcoin and put it into Bitcoin BCH Bitcoin Cash, but I think you know, I went back and I looked at a lot of old podcasts and things like that from 2017 when all the arguments actually were being you know uh, getting some shine on themselves. And the main argument, like I said, the whole thing was basically this enables Bitcoin to, without increasing the size of the block, be less expensive and faster with the transactions. SegWit was the big thing that was put out there to do so. Now, again, not having done my full research into Bitcoin Cash, I'm not exactly sure what all the things they've done to negate all the issues with scalability and speed of transactions. Um, but it seems like they have. It seems like they were able to solve the problem without actually doing another hard fork, you know, and so right now the closest thing that we do have to Satoshi's original Bitcoin, as described in his white paper, or or their white paper, is Bitcoin Cash.
Hmm.
And so it's definitely something that I'm going to be looking further into, because the difference, you know, when you and I met, Trevor, um, we had kind of a similar investment strategy.
Right.
Uh, but my investment strategy for Bitcoin was not, you know, buy low and sell high. My strategy for Bitcoin was I wanted it to be a place that I could like store my wealth.
Right.
The digital gold idea, I wanted it to be a place that um, that I could put my paycheck, so to speak, instead of, you know, putting it in a bank and watching my fiat value drop by the day. Um, but at this point, I'm not so sure that we're not right back at the same place, you know, where we started, because I'm not sure that I trust anything that could be taken over, you know, by simply having enough nodes to say to you know, we're talking about after validation even, but we're talking about enough nodes to basically just say, no, this is not your money, this is not your Bitcoin anymore, this is now our Bitcoin.
Hmm.
um, so I think that I don't want to hit people too hard with this because it's a pretty heavy duty type of idea, But I would encourage everybody not to listen to me, but to do their own research into SegWit and Taproot and ordinals. And, the other concern is that, I kind of feel like Bitcoin, we've been kind of hoodwinked by some of the developers that are involved in the current state of what Bitcoin is, because it does not seem like this is good for Bitcoin. It doesn't seem like this is in line with what Satoshi originally created. And let's remember what the reason was for this being created. It was from the 2008 crash. This was created because we couldn't trust the bankers. We couldn't trust the centralized authority. And what it seems like they're trying to take us back to with Bitcoin is having to trust the centralized authority again. So it's very concerning. It goes way beyond just my natural distrust of NFTs and me saying that Bitcoin doesn't need to have NFTs. We need a store, an anti-inflationary store of wealth. Satoshi created that, and now we have people in this modern world that are desperately trying to take us away from that again and saying, trust us. So that's kind of my thing with SegWit and what it means for decentralization. And I've said this a lot lately about all coins is does it have a developer? If it has a developer, is that developer going to, is the developer incentivized in any way to give up control and actually make this a decentralized exchange or a decentralized token? A token in and of itself, I don't think can even be called decentralized at all, because it relies on a completely different chain, a master chain to function. And so if you're relying on a master chain, how can you call yourself decentralized? You know what I mean? Is that master chain decentralized? Is Binance Smart Chain decentralized? Well, look at the crash for all these coins like you were just talking about that are on BSC versus the ones that didn't have the relationship to that, Binance Smart Chain. And that kind of tells you everything you need to know right there. So, like I said, the biggest red flag for me from somebody saying that, oh, I have this new decentralized exchange or decentralized coin, is the fact that you're trying to convince me that this is decentralized. And like you say, many of these are on completely different blockchains that rely on those blockchains to function.
Yep.
So, that's kind of my take on SegWit.
Well, I definitely want to do more research myself into it so I can at least increase my personal understanding of it. I want to take a look at Bitcoin Cash.
Yeah.
I know that they're sitting somewhere around $100, 112.
Yeah.
I don't quite remember the number, but I'm like, oh, that's a pretty good entry point. I think the highest we saw it was at like 1,200 a coin during the height of the bull market 2021. But yeah.
And I would encourage everybody to do that and not listen to me or anybody else. Do your own research, critically think about what's going on here, and I'll try to do my own research and continue to give you my opinions on this podcast. But it's very concerning to me, and I can kind of roll this SegWit conversation into something else that we wanted to talk about. Which is kind of like the whole debt ceiling, the U.S. debt ceiling argument that we've had. And I don't think that people really understand what that is and what it means and just what a giant fake political conversation it all is. A lot of people understand that once they see the deal that was struck with, people on both sides of the aisle supposedly voting for it and claiming victory, and then they tell you that the way that that it's a victory for your side is because the other side hates it. And again, This is all fake scammer politicians that are involved in this whole thing. So I actually wrote up what I titled the debt ceiling in perspective, and I'd like to read it a little bit just to
Go for it.
get the idea out there. Uh, and so I started by saying, consider this: what will we, the USA, pay our debt with? Will it be gold, silver, Bitcoin? So to answer this, you need to understand that this debt is held in the form of U.S. government issued IOUs called treasury bonds. And these bonds are held by private individuals, institutional investors, as well as foreign countries and investments. So as far as the biggest foreign investor countries go, Japan holds the most at approximately 15% of our national debt, followed by China at 12%, and the UK at 9%. Now, that's not the only countries, those are just the big three.
Right.
The vast majority of U.S. debt is actually held by U.S. banks and investors, state and local governments, mutual funds, pension funds, insurance companies, and investors in savings bonds. And so at this point, you might be asking yourself how this relates to the debt ceiling. And this is how much in IOUs the U.S. government can issue. That's our debt ceiling, meaning this is how much we can borrow. Because right now, ever since we went off the gold standard, this is a full faith and credit system. It's not backed up by anything besides investor faith that they'll see returns on their investment. So politicians striking, quote, a deal, unquote, on the debt ceiling is just a way to issue more treasury bonds that will require them to print more dollars, which will drive inflation higher, which will further destroy the faith in the dollar, which is simply the face of this giant scam that we as U.S. citizens have spent our lives working to try to get ahead in. And I'll further say that it's not just our lives, it's our parents' lives, it's our parents' wealth that they've created over their lives, it's our grandparents, and sometimes this goes even 4 generations back. So if the US dollar is starting to sound like a scam to you now, then you've been paying attention. The debt ceiling argument is a joke for politicians to deflect attention from the fact that they sold us out a long time ago. And one question you also might ask is, why doesn't Japan and China and the other investors, including all the U.S. citizens that hold these IOUs, cash in? Why don't they call in the debt? Well, that's the real crux of the matter. Because in recent past, we've seen depositors demand their money from banks, and many banks have defaulted, and these bank runs, so to speak. And this is the same thing that could happen theoretically if all the holders of U.S. Treasury bonds suddenly demanded the IOUs to be paid in full. The hypothesis being that something like this would break the entire global economy because just about everyone is involved in this decades-long Ponzi scheme. And this kind of brings us full circle to the initial question, what would these IOUs be paid in? Because the answer, of course, is dollars. And the only limit to how many dollars the U.S. government has access to is how fast the Fed's machines can print them, or the debt ceiling, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why the scam continues throughout the decades. The losers being every person in the world that holds, gets paid, and bases their financial goals on the US dollar. And that's you, that's me, that's a giant portion of the planet. So you can see now that the word inflation, what it actually is. It's a word that means essentially we stole all your money and made you unwilling slaves since well before we officially ended the gold standard. And I truly believe that. And this is why our land and natural resources are being bought up by foreign entities as well. Because they're smart enough to know that in the end, that's what has value. This is
Right.
why, I'm sorry?
Oh, I said right.
Okay. This is why many countries are desperately looking for a way out of this circle jerk via anti-inflationary, decentralized digital currencies like Bitcoin. And this is why the perpetrators of what is, again, the biggest scam ever run on the people of this planet want central bank digital currencies as soon as possible. They want full control over how you spend your money. And so, how does this fit into the politics and the world we live in today? Well, for one thing, it puts this debt ceiling argument into perspective. This is an argument between politicians, who are the biggest scammers out there, over spending and where all our government dollars should be going after they've embezzled and pissed away our taxpayer dollars as well as the funds we've borrowed. That's why any politician that tries to blame a global economic disaster on their political opponents is, and this is the nicest way I can say it, full of shit. And that's kind of where I do have more on that I've gone into, but it gets a little bit deeper. I don't want to ruin people's lives and days with a macro view on how this what this means for you in actuality. But I think that, again, this does put the debt ceiling argument a little bit into perspective as far as just how politicians use this to essentially tweak your emotions and get your votes. I think the biggest proof of that is the deal that they came up with, which is essentially they suspended the debt ceiling. They've opened up to, infinity the amount that we can borrow and issue in IOUs. And in order to do this, they're going to need to print more money. And that's why they said that they plan on printing $4 trillion extra dollars over the next 2 years. And my expectation is that it'll vastly be way more than 4 trillion. Which means that, again, by the time you get your paycheck into the bank, and that's including if you have direct deposit, it's worth much less than what you actually earned. And by the time you get it to the grocery store, it's worth even less. And then you add on to the whole idea of inflation. We've all seen, anybody who goes to the grocery store knows that just about the price of just about everything has risen by
up over 45%.
At least 5 times, yeah. And if you're trying to buy like things that are good and healthy for you, it's going to be probably more than that. So yeah, this kind of brings us to a conversation about who's behind the scam, And again, I think in my opinion, this is a scam that was started back in the 60s, probably after World War II. Because at some point, some of these foreign investments asked us to prove that we had the gold to back up the dollar.
Is this that infamous video clip of the one room at Fort Knox? Like, hey, look, we got all this gold.
And trust us, we've got a ton more of those in the back. Yeah. Essentially. So this is not necessarily something that's Biden's fault, or, this, like I said, this is how I say that this is a generational Ponzi scheme that has been going for many, many years. And the politicians and financial scammers that are involved in it right now, most of them have just jumped on board because they recognize what it is and recognize that they can make a ton of money off this, much more than they can make by actually, like I said, plumbing houses, building roads, doing the kind of things that actually are going to be here when our civilization is long gone and the cockroaches or the robot AI, the Terminators or the aliens that come down and see what's left. Those are the things that are going to be left over. I'll guarantee you what won't be left over is Bitcoin. No cryptocurrency is going to be left because there won't be any networks or electricity networks to run the coins. You're not going to have access to them, and you're not going to be able to spend it even if you did, because there are no global networks anymore. So that's a little bit more of a macro view than I wanted to go into, but
true. When you take a look at stores of value, I had a conversation with the CEO of a crypto project, I don't know, 2-3 weeks ago now, and he was very frank with me. He's like, Trevor, I'm going to offer you some financial advice. And I was like, shit, that's the one thing you're not supposed to do. He's like, buy gold, buy precious metals, do it now. Don't keep your money in the dollar. For reference, he's not in the US.
Yeah.
So he was like, the dollar is not going to survive. The dollar is not going to do well. Um, and again, let's say everything goes under the entire global electric grid's gone.
Which has been in
Gold's
the
still
news
not going to do
lately.
right, which that's always scary. But even then, gold isn't going to be worth shit. You can't use gold to buy things. It's going to become a bartering system. What do you have that I want, and what do I have that you want? Let's work something out. It's it goes back to get land, grow food, get livestock, be able to have enough firepower to defend yourself, your family, and all your things.
Well, and remember, the reason why we printed coins and paper money is because at some point you can only carry so much gold with you.
Right.
That shit is heavy. You know,
This is true.
like you need like a mule train or something like that to carry this gold. Um, so yeah, I mean, and silver and precious metals and resources, which is what you're talking about, have value for
Yep.
sure. And I would even argue that every civilization from the dawn of civilization of humanity has recognized this. And most of the governmental systems and systems of controlling civilization have kind of revolved around the idea that what's most important is land, because land has gives you access to resources, whether that's rivers for fishing, woods for hunting, farmland for growing your own food, places to get
Well,
clean water.
the
Uh,
farmland thing has always found it struck me as a fascinating thing. Like, for example, you have a house, you have your property, you have a certain amount of land, maybe it's a quarter acre, who knows?
mhm.
If you have a fruit-bearing tree on that property, it goes up in value. It's
Yeah.
just like, bro, it's just a lemon tree. Hey, it's still a resource. I'm like,
And,
damn.
and the reason,
Continue.
for, well, the reason for that is that because people understand that on a basic level still.
Hmm.
That's why I say that the global economy, the way it's set up right now, is the biggest Ponzi scheme and scam that we've ever seen. Is because they've convinced you that all you need is dollars or whatever fiat that your country uses. This is why countries that have been trying to use digital currencies, like who was it that went to Bitcoin?
El
Um,
Salvador.
yeah, El Salvador. That's why you know um, the global economy, the people that run that, made every threat and possible excuse they could to stop that from happening, because you know these are
Mhm.
people that are, like, again, as I said in the paper I wrote, um, this is a way to get out of the fucking global circle jerk. And no matter what they try to say things like, oh, well, most of the people in El Salvador, they don't even have wallets anymore. They only did it for the original, like, $30 or $40 that the government gave them to try to incentivize them, and then they haven't touched their wallets since. But the implications of what it means to be out of the global economy, um, are much longer reaching and much more important than just how many people are spending Bitcoin or dollars or whatever the fuck, man.
Hmm.
Um, but again, we wanted to talk briefly about the FBI and the Biden investigations that are supposedly going on, or being stopped from going on, and yeah, the things that we've learned, for sure, all the conspiracy theories that have become fact in just the last few months or the last year is incredible. Um,
Hmm.
and yeah, we have ledgers that show that Biden and his family have been paid all this money. And yet you have politicians saying, "Oh, this is treason," but yet some of those same politicians just voted for this debt ceiling deal, which fucks everybody
Mm-hmm.
except them, maybe. Although I
Well,
would also,
insider trading, the whole shebang, they are profiting. These politicians go in, their paycheck is what, $200,000 a year. They keep giving
yeah,
themselves
a little bit
raises as
lower,
well,
yeah,
but somehow they are going in and making millions upon millions of dollars. Their portfolios are growing like no other, and it's because of the insider trading that's occurring.
yep,
Things are beneficial to them. They know the information. They know when it's going to go down. So yeah, it comes down to I'm going to stay in power. I'm not really going to care about my constituents too much, but I know I don't want to lose power, so I need to immediately start bending the knee, acting as the cockholster to various organizations and powerful people so they can fund my campaign.
yeah,
When someone wins political office, they immediately start campaigning for the next election.
yeah,
They immediately start that fundraising. It's a never-ending process. The only instance of, hey, it's a one and done situation is when Bruce Wayne did a campaign event for Harvey Dent. And it was like, no, you'll never have to do another campaign
yeah,
or a fundraiser in your life when you
yeah,
do it with me.
yeah.
So yeah,
Well,
it's never ending, man.
and I would postulate that many of these scammers, be they politicians or be they involved in the financial system in some other way, they're not going to be, as George Carlin say, it's a big club and you're not in it. So and when it comes to things like global pandemics and where these viruses are being created and who they're being funded by, um, knowing how nature works. Some people say God, some people say the universe, some people call it whatever the fuck they want to call it. Uh, it's not predictable, like from a human perspective. The history of the world has shown a whole lot of powerful people just how not powerful they are when compared to the way the planet fucking works in real
Hmm.
life. So so I have no doubt in my mind that these people will also suffer the same casualties that most of the common people will as well. Um, but I would still hope that we didn't have to go that way. That
Hmm.
we didn't have to lose 7 billion people on this planet just to make sure that we're in line with um, climate change, just to fix climate change and do things like that. Um,
Well, and it seems like there's always going to be an issue. There's always going to be a some sort of foil or cover that we need to direct our attention to this. We need to direct our attention to that. Which, real quick, I did want to touch on. You remember the climate activists who were constantly like, "Hey, we're going to vandalize this painting.
yeah.
Let's spray paint all over it." They did it to a private jet finally. I'm like, oh, I'm not even mad about that one. You're finally, yeah,
Right.
if you want to bring light to the issue, go after the private jets. That stop destroying priceless pieces of art. It hurts my soul to know, like, I think it was Van Gogh's sunflower painting. I remember seeing that as a kid.
Yeah.
I remember witnessing it, standing in front of it, and then it was defaced and it hurt.
Yep.
It's something that survived for hundreds of years, acknowledged as an absolute priceless piece of art,
Yep.
is suddenly just gone. Um,
Yeah. I mean,
yeah, but
for
no,
for
let's.
for instance, my mother, back when I was like 10 years old, my mother used to be a big environmental activist, big, huge into education about, environmental dangers and things like that. Um, and she got a grant from the government and to go out and educate schools and things like this. And the first thing she bought with it was a giant Ford F-350, so we could drive around all these places. And even at that young age, I'm like, what the fuck, you know? So so yeah, I mean, the world's full of hypocrites, and I'm 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 definitely one of them. But
Well, when these hypocrites get, the spotlight shined on them, especially when we're talking about someone like the Bidens. Let's specifically focus on the Bidens, not necessarily about what's occurring, because
Hmm.
that's a given. But let's talk about what happens every time the Biden administration or the Biden family suddenly comes under the spotlight. You have it's always been the same thing for the
Distraction.
past year or so. It has been UFOs.
Yeah, that's been the big one.
UFOs
Yep.
every single time. It's like we were talking about this yesterday. I was on a walk, and this is let me back up. I had a pretty rough day yesterday. I was working, and I opened up social media, which you're not supposed to do, and for some reason Epstein was trending. I'm like, oh, is there some new information? I clicked on it, and I was treated to a disturbing video, and who knows if it's real or not. I don't know how the hell this shit was on Twitter, but of allegedly Jeffrey Epstein torturing a child for adrenochrome and harvesting it, and it was just like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
It pissed me off. It just disgusted me. Again, I don't know anything about this other than I was just like, wow, I can't believe this is here. And I that set me into a funk. And I didn't really want to look at the news after that, but I did later in the day, and I saw a headline about UFO whistleblowers, and I was just like, huh, okay. I typically get my news just from looking at memes, and there'd been also UFO things there too, and I'm like, okay, I'll look into this. And so I start looking into this, and there's this gentleman by the name of David Grush. He's an Air Force veteran. But what I found odd was I was only getting one news source really talking about this. I mean, Forbes did a small clip where it was someone asking whatever the hell her name is, the president's press secretary, about like, what do you know about this UFO whistleblower? And it was like, I don't know, a minute long video, and it ends up being 5 seconds at the very end where she's like, I don't know, talk to the U.S. Department of Defense. That's not me. It's like, okay. But there is a news agency that is seems to exist only on YouTube called News Nation.
Hmm.
I've never fucking heard of this
Yeah, me
group. I did find out after digging more into them. Remember, I don't remember which Cuomo brother this is, but they've got Cuomo now because he got sacked from CNN. I'm like, get the fuck out of here. And then there's a bunch of nameless people you've never heard of.
neither.
But yeah, they were the only ones really doing any coverage on this. And as I was telling you, I'm like, you know what? This seems kind of weird. There are only a few sources I really trust when it comes to this. You have a lot of people who can claim things,
Yeah.
but unless it's coming from George Knapp or his protege, Jeremy Corbell, I don't give a shit. It's fake as shit. So I finished my walk with you. Good phone call, or not?
Yeah.
I wasn't walking with you. I was walking and talking.
We were talking.
And I sit down, and there's a new video from News Nation. And lo and behold, who's sitting there talking to him? Jeremy Corbell. I'm like, son of a bitch, this is real now. Okay. And so more videos are coming out. So I fully expect them to be on Rogan soon. And at that point, I'll watch the 3 hour
Right.
conversation. I'll watch all the videos. I can't get down for a 5 minute news clip.
Yeah,
But
there's
I
not a
mean,
lot
this
of
is
information that you can get from that, other than what they want
no.
you to have.
Right. But at the end of the day, this is someone who is going through the formal whistleblower process with the US government, which was set up back at what, 2018,
Yeah.
when the Go Fast and Gimbal videos of UFOs first leaked, when that was from what, 2014 off the coast of San Diego,
Yeah.
with the Nimitz, Commander David Fravor. So the framework has been put in place, and this person is using the framework. It's been deemed credible, and they're now going through this process of submitting this, classified information to Congress, various panels. And what you had said to me while we were walking and talking was kind of fascinating, where we were talking about the whistleblowers coming forward into the Biden investigation.
Yeah, the
I
FBI
think you had
whistleblowers.
said
Yeah.
that, yeah, the
Because the
FBI
other
was.
news story that happened, I think not yesterday, but just the day before,
Mhm.
was that the FBI said that they couldn't protect the the whistleblowers that had all this information on quote unquote the Biden crimes and his family's crimes and all the money they've gotten from foreign nations and corporations and the influence peddling and things like that. Not to mention all the distractions and the fake Russian collusion hoax and all this stuff.
Well, you brought up the Nord Stream pipeline
Because that
yesterday.
was
We
the
were talking
last time
about
we
that.
really heard the UFO thing.
Correct. Correct. But you know, it just came out today, like an hour before we were talking about this. Um, U.S. intelligence is now saying, and I don't, I'm kind of shady, or not shady, but shifty on the numbers. No, it's still not the right word. Hazy. There we go.
I think you're correct on
Um,
both of those
so they were
things.
saying
Shady and
either
shifty, definitely.
3 weeks or 3 months. It's one of the two.
Yeah.
Before the Nord Stream pipeline thing happened, they said, or U.S. intelligence is saying that they were getting word that the Ukrainians were thinking of doing this,
Yeah.
and I was just like, is this the U.S. turning on Ukraine now?
Well, and
What? Why would you come out with this other than, hey, let's push that blame? But man, what a weird set of headlines. What interesting news is coming out right now, and I want to ignore it all. I don't have the bandwidth for it, but now I'm forced to pay attention because I don't want to be the happy idiot where ignorance is bliss.
right. Well, essentially, what I was saying when you mentioned that yesterday was that essentially every time Biden gets close to being in big trouble, we seem to hear about UFOs.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think you mentioned that the last time we heard about this was when the Chinese spy balloon issue happened. I think there was a little bit going on back then.
Yep.
But the last time we actually heard about UFOs big time in the media was when right after Cy Hirsch put out all the documentation about basically proving that this was U.S. Supported and led operation to blow up the Nord Stream pipeline. And yeah, many people had suspected that based on how Biden himself even said that they would end the pipeline if if our U.S. demands weren't met. And several people high up in the government and their associated entities have said the same thing. And then Cy Hirsch came out with, Cy Hirsch being one of the most respected journalists on the planet, comes out with the proof of this. And next thing you know, UFOs are real. And,
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to believe that UFOs being real is not hard to believe. It's a big universe out there. I would be more shocked if there wasn't other life, intelligent life even, out in the universe. And yeah, probably way more technologically advanced than us. But what's more shocking to me is the timing of these things. And like you say, the places that it comes from. In your case, you heard about this through a news organization that decided to employ a Cuomo brother, who
Right.
mainstream shill for the media. You know what I mean? You might as well have heard it from any number of these mainstream news outlets. And it does seem that every time Biden gets in trouble or gets close to being in trouble, they try to put out lots of distractions, and a big one is the UFO thing.
Well, the UFO thing is fascinating. So I'll send you the video. I saw this yesterday, and the reason why I find it fascinating is because this happened maybe 40 minutes away from where I am, just recently. Um, it was a UFO filmed over San Clemente, which for reference is the southern tip of Orange County, the separating line between Camp Pendleton and Oceanside. It's a large area. So
Yeah.
Camp Pendleton is a Marine base.
Yeah.
Just so we're clear. So was it a Marine craft? I have never seen such a clear fucking video of a legit saucer, and it's just going on, and I'm like, this is daylight.
Yeah.
This is, hey, we finally have a 4K fucking camera on this shit, and I'm like, so I'll send it over to you, but I'm like, the UFO thing is popping up, and is it a trendy thing for everyone to get on? Admittedly, this is coming from Secure Team 10. They've always been on this shit. but it's just like, wow, we're seeing reports around the world of these various unidentified aerial phenomenon, UAPs
Yep.
that are out there, and it's like, why are they suddenly becoming more visible? I mean, again, if we go with the hypothesis that we're not alone in this universe and that they're definitely present, okay, well, thinking about the control aspect of it all, why would why would we want to give up that control? Why wouldn't something like a false flag operation, a false invasion to be able to gather up that much more control of the human population go down? Why do you have people like, I think, what was it, the FBI spending over $1 billion researching what the effects of like the fallout of UFO life on the Catholic religion be? It's just like, what the hell is going on here? Are humans just not prepared for it, or is this some gradual drip feed, like, hey, we're gonna reveal it soon, kind of situation? But being
Well,
seen in broad daylight is fascinating. Having any UFOs that have any sort of lights on them is also like, why the fuck would you need lights, bro? You don't need lights. So is
well,
that
I mean,
all,
it's very dark in
government
space
stuff?
and cold. It's very cold in space. And while I'm
True.
quoting Star Trek, let's remember that the whole plot to First Contact, the Star Trek movie, was that um, basically it was first contact between humans and Vulcans. The guy made the first warp engine, and the Vulcans detected the warp signature and came down and decided that was time to make contact with humanity. Now, what
Hmm.
happened in the Star Trek universe is that united all these warring human factions and enabled them to be better, right?
Hmm.
But knowing what we know about human nature, I think it's just as easy to think that that would simply enable a government to gain more control um, by intimidation and fear of some other enemy. You know what I mean? In the
Yep.
Star Trek world, they were like, oh, well, we all have to come together because, we don't know what threats are out in the world and things like that. But I think it's much more likely that it would just be a way to control and gain power. I don't think that we would end up with some kind of, um, very optimistic and loving and intelligent and seeking type of government that would come out of that. It
Yep.
seems like the exact opposite would actually happen. So that might be part of it too. Who knows? Like I said, I think that when you talk about the possibility of actual aliens having visited Earth and whether or not we have that technology somewhere in some Air Force base or secret underground base, um,
I mean, the whistleblower is saying that we do, and
yeah.
that we've recovered bodies,
Oh,
non-human
sure.
bodies, and it's just like, hey, he's acknowledging them for what they are.
Well, look at
When
the
you
way
have crashes, you're going to
technology,
have pilots.
right? So look at the way technology has advanced uh, during these times. Since like the '50s, the end of World War II. Um, Incredible advances in technology.
Hmm.
I mean, we're talking about more advances in 50 years than we had in thousands of years. Um, and I mean, we've seen, especially in computers and things like that, we've seen kind of a slowdown of that. So does that mean that the aliens have gotten smart and they know better than to be careful when they come around? I don't know. But like I said, I saying that it's a distraction isn't me saying that it's not true.
Hmm.
What I'm saying is that every time, you know, it seems like this giant attempt at gaining so much more control over not just the American people, but global people on an individual level, be that by central bank digital currencies where they can literally tell you what you can and can't buy. All these kind of political noise games that they're playing with us, trying to separate people from the idea that um, you should hate these people because they don't politically align with you. You know, it's all meant to gain control. And I think that every time I hear one of these distractions, that's the question I ask myself. And I don't think I'm the only person that does that.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
that doesn't mean that I'm not, a believer, or like I say, it could be true, could not be true. But I would be more shocked that if it wasn't actually true. In the same way, I would be shocked that to find out that Biden was innocent.
Well, I will say this, and I think it's a great point to end on at this point, because we're not even talking crypto anymore, so I'll bring it back.
Sure.
You better fucking believe the moment it is revealed that, hey, aliens are real, alien coin is gonna go through the fucking roof,
Yeah.
and you got to get on that shit
Yeah.
quick, under $1 million
Invest.
market cap. Come on, come on. Not financial advice. I
Yeah.
didn't
Yeah.
even say that
For
right.
sure.
Advice. Yeah, but
No,
anything else?
I think that's pretty much it. Like I said, I really want to talk. Talking about Biden and politics is not really something that I like to do here on the podcast because,
Hmm.
um, my background is like punk rock, man, and it's all about critical thinking. It's not about being in some kind of religious or political cult. And so I like to talk more about facts. I would like to be able to cite more of these things. And so my focus is on kind of Bitcoin and this whole SegWit thing. And I would like to flush that out in some future podcasts that we do here. But like I said, I would
Yeah.
like to be able to give some citations and do some better research than what I presented today, which is very just a brief explanation of what it is and what my personal concerns are. So again, I would just encourage everybody who watches this, if you're interested in that kind of thing, do your own research. Um, you know, uh, certainly no financial advice being given here, other than to learn to hunt and fish and maybe buy some land. you know, but other than that, I'd say goodbye. And it's been fun. This is probably the longest one we've done so far. We're
I
almost
was
at
about
an
to
hour
say, I
and a half.
think we've done it for almost, yeah, it's been a long one. So it'll be
So
fun for the rendering process.
So
But
hopefully
guys,
people
thanks
that
for
watch,
tuning in.
yeah, hopefully people that watch this, are of the same mind as us and can kind of, separate out the personal opinion from the fact and like I said, hopefully we can present some more of those facts here pretty soon in the next podcast we do. And yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed doing the podcast with your buddy
Oh yeah,
that last
Co.
time.
Hmm.
He was really good to have on here, and we've even got some people that I've kind of reconnected with that both Trevor and I know that have indicated they're in the crypto space, and we've worked with them in the past and things like that. But they've indicated interest in coming on here and talking some stuff. So hopefully more facts, but always mixed with opinion. And yeah, so hopefully it'll be just not just me and Trevor giving you our own subjective opinions all the time here. But yeah, it's been fun. It's been good.
Yep. Alrighty, guys. Again, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you with the next episode whenever that happens to be. And you never know. Maybe we will have some of those people on. Maybe we'll have Co. Maybe it'll be an episode where we're all in the same place at the same time.
How about
We'll
we
have
get
to
an
wait and
alien?
see.
Let's get one of those alien pilots on. That would be dope, dude. You
Hey,
know?
bro. So what's your stance on Buffalo coin?
Yeah, yeah. Buffalo cone. Yes.
To the moon, bro.
Invest. All
Yep. Yeah.
right, guys.